That night, when I opened the door to my apartment, my whole world was gone. No suitcase, no clothes, no familiar laughter. On the table, just one thing, a divorce paper. And on my phone, the bank message. Every dollar I had saved in 10 years, gone. I stood there frozen, in my own home, yet feeling like a stranger. The place that once held life, now nothing but empty walls. The kitchen so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking. Each tick, like a countdown to a life collapsing. The strange thing is, only 12 hours earlier, everything was normal. That morning, I cooked us breakfast. Fried eggs, toast, her coffee with milk. I kissed her forehead before leaving. She smiled, whispered, "Go to work. I'll tidy up a bit." I thought I was leaving behind peace. But I came back, to ruins. That contrast, cut like a knife. Morning full of false calm. By night, nothing but cold emptiness. I walked around, searching for traces. The closet, stripped bare. A few hangers swaying, like they were mocking me. The nightstand drawers, empty. No photos, no birthday cards. As if no woman had ever lived here at all. But the money wasn't what broke me most. It was this. That morning's hug, the one that felt so ordinary, like 1,000 times before, was the last hug of our marriage. I gave it, not knowing it was goodbye. And I wondered, did she look at me one last time, while I failed to notice? Was that faint smile her hidden way of saying farewell? That night, I realized something cruel. Sometimes life doesn't warn you. It only takes one day, one evening, to erase everything you thought would last forever. I'm Joseph, 37. If you asked me about my life before it all fell apart, I'd say it was simple, not perfect, but peaceful. A small woodworking shop, a 2-bedroom apartment, and a wife I once believed would walk with me to the very end. My shop was in the suburbs, a quiet street. Not a big business, just an old workshop, with a few worn-out tools. But it was mine, my sweat, my pride. I loved the feel of raw wood under my hands, the smell of fresh sap, turning it into a dining table, a rocking chair, a sturdy bookshelf. People used to say every piece I made carried a mark of my heart, because I didn't build fast to sell. I built slow to last a lifetime. Most of my customers were young families. They'd stop by, tell me about their new home, ask me to make their first dining table. Once, an old woman came in, asked for a rocking chair, said she wanted a place to read in the winter. I remembered every face, every story. I wasn't rich, but I felt complete. And then there was her, my wife, the part of life I thought I was lucky to have. We met years ago, when I was still working construction in the city. Every day, I stopped by the little coffee shop where she worked, ordered a black coffee after a long dusty shift. She always smiled. "You drink coffee like it's medicine." That smile, I remember it more than anything else. Our love wasn't loud. It was like a small river, slow, steady. She loved books. I loved wood. I built her a chair to read in, a deep chair with soft curved arms. When she sat in it, book in hand, the warm light falling on her hair, I thought I had touched happiness. That chair was my proof of love, and it stayed until the very last day. Our wedding was small, an outdoor gathering, a few tables, strings of yellow lights. She wore a simple white dress. I borrowed a suit from a friend. No roses, no diamond rings, just one promise. We'll stay together. I believed in that promise more than anything else in this world. After marriage, life was built on little things. I left for work early. She'd still be half asleep, whispering, "Drive safe." At night, I cooked dinner. She read on the chair I built. In the winter, I made hot cocoa, set it on the table, and watched her read. We rarely argued. I thought silence was the way to keep peace. But peace, sometimes, is a double-edged blade. It blinded me to the cracks forming underneath. At first, she shared less. When I told her about my customers, she only gave me a faint smile. When I asked, "Want to go somewhere this weekend?" she said, "I'm busy." I thought she was just tired. Then she stayed up later. I'd walk past the room, see the glow of her phone on her face. I told myself, just news or social media. I didn't want to seem suspicious. Some nights, she said she was visiting friends. Came home late. I was busy at the shop and thought, maybe she just needed her space. I didn't ask. One day, I handed her the ledger I always kept. Every expense, every dollar. We used to go over it together. But that day, she barely glanced, set it down, said nothing. I told myself it was nothing, and I let it go. And that was where I went wrong. I thought I was a good husband, worked hard, saved money, stayed faithful. But looking back, I see my fault too. I gave too much of myself to the shop, to small contracts, too little to my wife. I thought providing stability was enough. But sometimes, what a woman needs is just a longer hug at the end of the day. If I had paid attention, I would have seen her eyes grow distant. If I had sat beside her, I would have heard her sighs in the late night. But I stayed silent. Silent, thinking it would keep the peace. That silence killed us from the inside. I remember certain nights. The apartment lit. I worked on wood in my study. She read in the living room, only a few steps apart, yet it felt like an ocean. I didn't know that in those quiet nights, she was already writing her goodbye. If someone had asked me then, "Are you happy?" I would have said yes. I had a wife, a job, a home. I didn't know. Happiness can be as fragile as a single thread, and the hand that cuts it can be the very hand you trusted most. I used to think love meant staying, but maybe to her, love simply meant leaving when she found a warmer place. And me, the man who believed in the strength of wood, never realized that the human heart breaks far easier than anything I ever touched. Some marriages don't break with an explosion, but with small cracks, quiet, invisible, until one day they spread too wide to hide. I can't tell the exact moment it began. All I know is, one day I looked over and realized the woman lying beside me each night had become a stranger. I still kept my routine, cooked dinner, waited for her. We used to eat together, talk about our day, laugh at little things. But then she started coming home late. At first, 30 minutes, then an hour, then sometimes not until midnight. Once I cooked her favorite, honey roast chicken, set the table, warm light glowing. I pictured her walking in, smiling, but the clock kept moving. 8, 9, 10, still no one. I sat alone, ate cold chicken. It felt like swallowing stones. She came home near midnight, a strange perfume still lingering. I asked, "Where were you?" She said short, "Friends, go to sleep." I stayed silent. Inside, something sank. Men often think silence keeps peace, but sometimes silence is a death sentence. That year, my birthday fell on a Friday. I didn't want much, just a hug, a word. But all day, she said nothing. That night, I bought myself a small cake, lit the candles. She walked in, glanced, and said, "I forgot, I'm tired," then went straight to bed. I sat there, watching the candle flicker. A cake for two, eaten by one. I forced a smile, wished myself happy birthday. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. Love doesn't die in a scream. It dies in indifference. One evening, my best friend stopped by the shop. He looked at me. "You okay? You've lost weight." I smiled. "I'm fine, just busy." I couldn't tell the truth. How could I say that every night, lying beside my wife, felt like lying next to emptiness? I was afraid. Afraid pity would make it too real. And then came that night. I was clearing the table when her phone lit up. A message on the screen. "Are you home yet?" My chest tightened. The plate almost slipped from my hands. She walked out, saw me staring at the phone, quickly grabbed it, turned it off, forced a smile. Just a group chat. But her voice shook. Her eyes turned away. I wasn't stupid. I knew group chats don't end with a heart. I wanted to ask, to push for the truth, but I stayed silent. Because sometimes we choose silence not out of trust, but because we're too afraid to face the truth. A few days later, I couldn't hold it in. "Are you hiding something from me?" I asked. She froze, then frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You've changed. You go out, you don't tell me, you hide your phone." She slammed her book down. "You're paranoid, always suspicious. Can't you let me have my space?" Her tone cold, sharp. Every word cut like a blade. I said nothing, afraid if I spoke more, the distance would grow wider. But deep down, I knew. When a woman asks for space, she's already halfway gone. After that fight, dinners became theater. I cooked, she ate. No words exchanged. The wooden chair in the corner was still there, but empty, cold. I stared at it, wondering. The chair I built still exists. But does our love still exist? One afternoon, I came home early. The door unlocked. I heard soft laughter from the living room. I stepped closer. She was on the sofa. Her face lit up, a smile I hadn't seen in months. Phone in her hand, glowing. "I miss you," she whispered. Those words weren't for me. I froze. She didn't know I was there. When she turned, saw me, her face changed. She hid the phone, forced a smile. "You're back already? Why didn't you say?" I smiled back, faint. "Maybe. I came back too soon." And in that room, the invisible gap between us had become a canyon. Nights after that, I couldn't sleep. Lying beside her, listening to her steady breath, I asked myself, who is she dreaming of? I turned, wanting to hold her, but my hand stopped midway, like hitting a wall of ice. I blamed myself. Maybe I worked too much, trusted silence too much, thought money and stability were enough, when maybe all she wanted was a longer hug each night. Men like us, we take pride in endurance, but sometimes that very endurance kills us. One night, I opened my ledger. The pages shook in my hands, a large withdrawal from our joint account, one I never knew about. I flipped back and forth, hoping I was wrong, but I wasn't. The pen slipped from my hand, left a dark stain on the page. I looked up, toward the bedroom door, slightly ajar. Inside, she sat scrolling her phone. The blue glow lit her calm face. And me, sitting outside, clutching that ledger, my heart heavy as stone. In that moment, I knew. The crack had turned into a chasm, and the day of greatest loss was drawing near. If the months before were just fine cracks, this was the time the whole wall began to shake. Like one soft touch, and everything would collapse. I tried to bring back the little things, the things that once made her smile. One night, I bought roses, wrapped them clumsily, left them on the table with a note. "I love you," like the very first day. When she came home, I waited. She glanced, smiled, for a second. Then it was gone. She set the flowers on a chair, took off her coat, and walked straight to the bathroom. I stood there, hands still rough with sawdust, listening to the water run, as if it was washing my effort down the drain. Another time, I tried honey roast chicken, her favorite. I set the table, lit a candle, but she only ate a few bites, then put down her chopsticks. "I'm full." I forced a smile. "Not good?" "No, I just don't feel like it." She stood up, her back cold, fading from the table. The candle left flickering, all alone. If I had faced the truth then, I would have seen it. These weren't dinners anymore. They were the final acts, before the curtain fell. One night, I woke up, 2:47 a.m. The bed beside me, empty. I walked to the living room. She was in the wooden chair I had built, phone glowing in her hands, lighting up her eyes. When I stepped closer, she flinched, shut it off quickly. "You're still awake?" Her voice trembled. "Yeah, just thirsty," I said, heading for the kitchen. I poured water. Couldn't drink it. Her shadow stretched on the wall. That chair, once the place where she laughed over novels, now the place where she whispered to someone else. And me, the man who built it, left standing outside. That year's birthday, I'll never forget. I didn't want a party. Just a hug, a word. All day, nothing. That evening, I bought myself a cake, lit a single candle. When she walked in, I said, "It's my birthday today." She paused, then sighed. "Sorry, I forgot. I'm tired. Going to bed." I sat alone, the candle flickering, then fading into smoke, and for the first time, I felt truly old. Not from age, but from being forgotten. If love dies in a moment, for me, it died when that candle went out. In a room meant for two, but holding only one. Not long after, a friend stopped by the shop. He hesitated, then said, "Joseph, I saw your wife, with another man, maybe just a coworker, but you should know." I clenched my hands, forced a smile. "You must be mistaken." But inside, I knew he wasn't lying. Rumors were stones, thrown into a lake already cracked with ice, breaking it apart faster. That night, I couldn't hold back. "Do you have someone else?" I asked, my voice shaking but firm. She set down her chopsticks, stared at me. "Joseph, you suffocate me. You don't trust me, always suspicious. I'm exhausted. I just want the truth." She looked at me. "The truth is, there's nothing left to explain." Those words struck like a hammer. Nothing left to explain. Which meant, in her heart, it had been over long ago. As if that wasn't enough. Work collapsed too. A major contract canceled. When I called, they said, "Sorry, Joseph, you don't seem stable. We need someone more reliable." I dropped the phone on the shop floor. The saw silent, the air heavy with dust. I looked at the unfinished boards and saw myself, unfinished, useless. I thought, maybe a trip, just us two. I booked a small inn by the sea, packed clothes, built a wooden frame for a photo. A gift, a last chance. The morning we were to leave, she never came home. I waited at the station, suitcase by my side, frame in my hand. The crowd thinned, the clock moved. Only I remained. A message buzzed. "I'm busy, don't wait." I stared at the suitcase, the frame, and forced a smile. It wasn't just a trip canceled. It was the truth. We'd been walking different roads for a long time. If love ever deserved one last chance, I gave it. She didn't take it. And in that moment, I knew. I was on my own. A week later, the bank message came. Our account, nearly empty. I rushed home. The apartment was silent. The closet stood open, clothes missing. On the floor, a suitcase, neatly packed, ready for a trip I wasn't part of. On top, a note, just 4 words. "Don't look for me." I sank to the floor, the paper trembling in my hands, the clock ticking loud in the empty room. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a sentence. And I knew the storm had arrived. I thought the worst moment was holding that note. "Don't look for me." But that was only the prologue. After that night, she vanished. Phone off. Socials erased. No one knew where she went. The apartment held nothing of her, except the faint perfume on her pillow, and the wooden chair, cold and empty. Each night I sat in the dark, listening to the clock, drinking, passing out on the floor, waking to bottles scattered around me. Sometimes I stared at the chair, hammer in my hand, wanting to smash it to pieces. But I never could. I didn't have the courage to destroy the last thing we had left. People say losing the one you love is like losing a piece of your heart. For me, it felt like my whole heart was hollowed out, leaving nothing but an echo. One afternoon, I took the bus to deliver to my last customer. Rain pouring. The bus stopped at a busy intersection. I sat in the back, staring blankly through the wet glass. And then I saw her. That walk, that hair, no mistake. But what froze me wasn't just her. It was the man beside her, holding the umbrella, holding her hand tight. And in her arms, a baby. I pressed my face to the glass. Rain hitting hard, my chest pounding. She smiled. The smile I had waited months to see. But it wasn't mine anymore. It was his. The bus moved on. I kept looking back until they disappeared into the rain. Tears mixed with raindrops, burning hot, freezing cold. That night, I sat alone in the dark. I poured drink after drink, but it all tasted like nothing. I laughed through tears. So, while I was dying here, she was already building a new family. Rage hit me. I grabbed the hammer, raised it high over the chair I had built with love, ready to break every piece. But my hands shook. I dropped it, fell to my knees, held the chair tight, cried like a child. If anyone had seen me then, they wouldn't have seen a 37-year-old man. They would have seen someone who lost everything, clinging to a corpse of the past. At times, I thought I would die here. Not because someone killed me, but because I had no reason left to live. The next day, a friend called. "Joseph, I heard she's in the next state. The man's wealthy. And they just had a baby." I stayed silent. Didn't answer. I'd already seen it with my own eyes. I didn't need more words. The truth wasn't suspicion anymore. It was a broken mirror. And every time I touched it, it cut me open. That night, I cleaned the apartment, gathered the last of her things, a scarf, an old book, and packed them in a box. I didn't cry. The tears had run dry. The moment I saw her cradling that child in the rain. Then I turned to the chair. For so long, I couldn't touch it. But this time, I covered it with a white cloth. I stood there, staring at it, like a coffin. It was a funeral, a silent burial for my love. No flowers, no goodbye. Only my shadow, cast on the wall. People bury the dead in cemeteries. But me, I buried love right here, in this apartment, under a white cloth, over a wooden chair. I thought I'd never see her again. After that note, after the suitcase, after seeing her in the rain, holding a child, I believed the cord between us was cut. But life has a way of dragging the past back, right when you think you've buried it. That day, rain tapping on the roof. I was in the shop, sweeping sawdust, the broom scraping the floor, light flickering. dust hanging like smoke. Then, knocks on the door. I opened it, and my heart stopped. It was her. Hair-soaked, coat worn thin, face hollow. Not the confident woman I last saw in another man's arms. She stood there, trembling. "Joseph!" I froze. Memories flashed. Her morning smile, the cold dinners, the texts, the rain. My chest ached. But there was no storm left in me. Only emptiness. I turned, opened the door. "Come in." We sat across from each other. Her eyes landed on the chair, covered in white cloth. Tears spilled. "You still kept it." I said nothing. She bit her lip, then broke down. I was wrong. He left me when he found out I was pregnant. I thought I found love, but I was just a game. Her confession fell heavy, but I felt no triumph, only hollow. Some apologies come too late, like flowers on a grave. They look nice for the living, but mean nothing to the dead. She whispered, broken. "Joseph, I have nothing left. Please, give me another chance. We can start over." I laughed, bitter. "You had chances, many. You chose to leave." "Because of you," she screamed, tears streaming. "You were always silent, buried in wood, buried in numbers. You never saw me, never heard me. I felt like a ghost in that house." Her words cut deep. I'd blamed myself for that very thing. Yes, I worked too much, believed providing was enough. Yes, I stayed silent when she needed to be heard. But betrayal is never the answer. I clenched my fists, my voice low. "Maybe I wasn't perfect, but I never left you. You left me, while I was still there." She collapsed into sobs. I watched her cry. Part of me wanted to wipe her tears. Part of me wanted to turn away forever. I walked to the drawer, pulled out an envelope. Inside, the divorce papers she once left unsigned. I placed it on the table. "Here, sign it." Her eyes red, trembling. "Joseph, do you really want to end it, after all this?" I looked at her, long. The image of her in the rain, holding that child, burned in my mind. I closed my eyes, exhaled. "I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back." She shook as she picked up the pen. Ink blurred with tears, each stroke slicing the last thread between us. When she finished, I walked to the chair, pulled the cloth down. The surface scratched, faded. "This was where you sat to read. Proof of the love I put into you. Now, it's just an empty chair." She cried harder, fell to the floor. I didn't move to catch her. I pulled the cloth back over, slow, like closing a coffin. Some deaths need no grave. Just a cloth over memories. And two hearts, no longer bound. She stood, shaking, picked up her bag. At the door, she laid a key on the table. The old key to our home, metal clinking sharp against the wood. She turned, eyes blurred. "Joseph, I'm sorry." I nodded, nothing more. The door shut. The sound of rain drowned everything else. I stared at the key, next to the old ledger, yellowed with age. A key that opened nothing. A book that meant nothing. Two relics of a failed marriage. I sat there for a long time. No anger left, no tears. Only rain on the roof. Wind through the cracks. I placed my hand on the covered chair. Looked out the window. Rain falling white, blinding. I opened the shop door. Let the wind rush in. Let the cold rain strike my face. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. She was gone. Took everything. But when that door closed, I walked out of my prison. In the rain, I knew. I was free. After she signed the divorce papers and left the key on the table, the apartment fell into silence. No footsteps. No clatter of pans. No laughter I used to know. Only the ticking clock and my own breath echoing in the empty room. But this time, silence wasn't a sentence. It was a blanket. Heavy, but calm. I learned how to live alone. Every morning, I made myself coffee. Set the cup by the window. Sometimes, I still poured a second cup, out of habit. Only to remember, no one sat across from me anymore. I left it there, to grow cold. A quiet ritual, reminding me some habits take years to fade. The shop came back to life. No big orders anymore. Just small things. Photo frames, music boxes, simple chairs. And when my hands touched the grain, when the scent of wood rose up, I felt a pulse. Proof I still had worth. One day, cleaning an old drawer, I found a crumpled note. A grocery list. Her rushed handwriting. Stained with coffee. I held it and smiled faintly. Love, it turns out, isn't in grand dinners or promises of forever. It hides in lists of eggs, milk, and bread. It's the ordinary things that leave the deepest holes when they're gone. People don't break from storms. They break from an empty chair at dinner, from a cup of coffee no one drinks. I no longer asked why she left, no longer punished myself. Forgiveness didn't come in one great moment. It came quietly, in small things. Washing dishes alone, watching sunlight fall on the floor, hearing an old song in the night. Forgiveness, I learned, is simply letting go of the need for an explanation. I lost much. A wife, money, the workshop I once took pride in. But the greatest loss was the man I used to be. The man who thought silence could keep peace. The man who thought hard work was enough. The man who never knew love can slip away like rain through open hands. When it all collapsed, I had to let that version of me die, to learn to be someone else. A Joseph who speaks, who listens, who knows love needs tending, not just with duty, but with presence. One autumn morning, I pulled the cloth off the wooden chair. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I set it in the corner where the sunlight reached, and I sat down. For the first time in years, I let myself sink into it. The wood groaned, a dry crack echoing in the empty room, like a bell tolling the end of a chapter. I sat still, light warming my face. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll love again. Maybe I'll stay alone. But I know this. I won't let silence kill another marriage. We never know which hug will be the last. But once you realize that, you learn to hold tighter, not just to someone else, but to life itself.